What if the friendly face in your neighborhood, the man who threw the best parties, the one who even dressed as a clown to entertain children, was secretly a predator of immense cruelty? It sounds like the plot of a horror movie. But for dozens of young men, John Wayne Gacy turned this terrifying possibility into a horrifying, deadly reality, his ordinary suburban home concealing a nightmarish secret buried just beneath the floorboards. The early life of John Wayne Gacy was far from idyllic, a fractured mirror reflecting a childhood marred by the presence of a volatile alcoholic father. This man, who should have been a protector, was instead a source of constant belittlement and abuse, instilling in young Gacy a deep-seated sense of inadequacy. Even then, glimpses of a manipulative personality began to surface. He was known as a braggart, quick with a tall tale, and possessed an unnerving skill for talking his way out of trouble. A significant head injury from a swing set accident led to a series of blackouts, events his dismissive father often accused him of faking. Whether these were genuine afflictions or convenient excuses, they added another layer to the involved and troubling picture of his youth. These early experiences cast long, dark shadows, but few could have predicted the true depths of the depravity that was slowly, almost unnoticeably taking root within him. As Gacy entered adulthood, he began his first forays into the working world, and it was here he discovered a natural talent for sales, a persuasive charm that could win over almost anyone. This gift of the gab would become a key tool in his later deceptions. His marriage to Marlyn Myers and a later move to Waterloo, Iowa, seemed to signal a conventional life. He carefully crafted a public image of success as a KFC manager and became an increasingly active and visible member of the community, joining the JCs and other local organizations. On the surface, he was the epitome of an upstanding, responsible citizen, a man on the rise. The facade was solidifying. He was becoming a pillar of his community, respected and admired. Yet, beneath this polished veneer of suburban respectability, a disturbing undercurrent of darkness was beginning to stir, a chilling counterpoint to the life he presented to the world. The carefully constructed image of John Wayne Gacy, the model citizen, first cracked, then shattered in Iowa. In 1968, a SDOMI charge surfaced, exposing his predatory actions against a teenage boy. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a violent assault that led to a 10-year prison sentence. Gacy, for reasons not entirely clear, served only 18 months. How did he manage such an early release from a serious conviction? Inside Anamosa State Penitentiary, Gacy wasn't reformed. He was scheming. He manipulated the system with chilling effectiveness, rising to the position of first cook. He artfully concealed the true violent nature of his crime from fellow inmates, instead portraying himself as a victim of circumstance, a model prisoner. It was during this incarceration that news of his abusive father's death reached him. Reports from those who knew him then suggest this event, and especially his inability to attend the funeral, deeply impacted him, perhaps severing a final twisted link to his past. Freedom for Gacy didn't mean rehabilitation. It meant an opportunity to return to society and sharpen his deadly deceptions to an even finer, more terrifying edge. Upon his release, Gacy returned to the Chicago area, quickly remarrying and establishing PDM Contractors, a painting and construction business. This venture, seemingly legitimate, provided him with a sinister, almost limitless hunting ground, a steady stream of young men, often vulnerable and looking for work. It was during this period that Pogo the Clown was born. Donning grease paint and a cheerful costume, Gacy performed at children's parties, hospital events, and community fundraisers. This persona was the perfect disguise, an emblem of joy and innocence that masked an immense monster. Young men, many of them his own employees, were lured into his orbit, unsuspecting of the horrifying danger that awaited them. The cullings commenced in earnest with the murder of Timothy McCoy in 1972. Gacy would later attempt to frame this as self-defense, but a horrifying new chapter of violence had certainly begun. Rumors, though unconfirmed, persist even today that he sometimes used his clown disguise or even impersonated police officers, using symbols of trust and authority to trap his unsuspecting victims. With each successful deception, his audacity grew, and so did the horrifying secret buried just beneath the floorboards of his seemingly ordinary home on Summerdale Avenue. That house, number 8213, would become synonymous with great terror. Beneath it lay the infamous crawlspace, Gacy's personal gruesome cemetery. Here he carefully concealed the bodies of his victims, creating a labyrinth of horrors just feet below where he lived and entertained. His method was brutal and sadistic. He often used what he chillingly termed his rope trick, a tourniquet, to strangle his victims, often after drugging and subjecting them to horrific tortures. Chilling accounts pieced together later describe the agonizing final moments of those he targeted, their lives extinguished with cold, calculated cruelty. An increasing recklessness became apparent as his calling spree grew. He preyed on runaways, youths from the streets, and even those directly in his employ. The question still haunts many. How did so many young men vanish from the Chicago area without starting a massive, coordinated alarm sooner? In one terrifying instance, a young man named Jeffrey Rignall survived Gacy's assault and bravely reported his ordeal to the police, yet Gacy remained free. Speculation swirls that Gacy's practiced cunning, his carefully cultivated image as a respectable businessman, and perhaps even the authorities' initial disbelief or mishandling of the information, allowed him to continue his reign of terror. But the disappearance of one particular boy, someone who didn't fit the profile of a drifter, would finally begin to unravel Gacy's carefully constructed world of lies. The net began to close on December 11, 1978, with the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest. Piest was a bright, well-loved teenager from a supportive family, last seen talking to a local contractor, John Wayne Gacy, about a potential construction job. Piest's absence immediately started an intensive investigation, his family persistently pushing for answers, unlike what happened with many of Gacy's previous victims. Police attention quickly zeroed in on Gacy. Their initial encounters with him were met with belligerence and evasion. During one early surveillance, an officer peered through a diamond-shaped window in Gacy's front door and glimpsed a face staring back from the darkness within, a chilling, unsettling moment. Soon, investigators obtained a search warrant. The true horror began to unfold when they accessed the crawlspace. The strong stench of decay was the first assault on the senses, followed by the grim, careful excavation. The words of one officer echoing from beneath the house sent a shockwave through everyone present. "I've got another rib cage down here." The House of Horrors had begun to surrender its ghastly secrets, but the full, terrifying scope of John Wayne Gacy's depravity was only just starting to emerge, one horrifying discovery at a time. As the earth under his house yielded its gruesome secrets, John Wayne Gacy began to talk. His confessions were chillingly detached, devoid of any noticeable remorse. He spoke of his victims with a cold disdain, at times callously dismissing them as human trash, as if their lives had no value. The following trial was a media sensation. Gacy's defense team argued insanity, claiming he couldn't control his actions. But the prosecution painted a starkly different picture, presenting evidence of Gacy's careful planning and his sharp awareness of his guilt. They pointed to passages he'd underlined in Bibles and his own notes on sexually dangerous persons' acts, in law books, suggesting a calculated knowing evil. The final victim count was shocking. 33 young men and boys confirmed killed. The grim task of identifying all of them has stretched on for decades, with some closure coming only recently, such as the 2021 identification of Francis Wayne Alexander. Even after his conviction, the lasting born or made debate raged. Was Gacy a monstrous product of his abusive upbringing and societal pressures, or was he inherently evil, a predator from the start? Reports following a post-mortem examination of his brain claimed no obvious physical abnormalities, deepening the mystery. His eventual execution brought a legal end to his reign of terror, but the questions, the theories, and the chilling legacy of John Wayne Gacy endure, casting a long dark shadow over our perception of the potential for evil within human nature. John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. But did his death provide closure for the victims' families, or for a society still struggling with the immensity of his crimes? His legacy is certain. He remains one of America's most infamous and prolific serial killers, a name synonymous with evil hidden in plain sight. His case forever changed how such crimes are investigated and perceived, forcing a re-evaluation of how missing persons, especially vulnerable young men, are treated. Decades later, a morbid curiosity persists. Recent documentaries like Netflix's Conversations with a Killer, the Gacy tapes, released in 2022, re-examine his horrors, bringing his story to a new generation and sparking fresh discussions and online speculation. What drives this continued fascination with such deep darkness? Lingering, unsettling questions remain. Were there more victims whose bodies were never found, whose stories remain untold? Could his reign of terror, which spanned years, have been curtailed sooner? Perhaps the most deeply disturbing realization is that such deep evil, such a capacity for cruelty, can masquerade so well behind a smile, a friendly gesture, even a clown's painted grin. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable thought that monsters can be real, and they might not always be strangers lurking in the shadows, but individuals present in our communities.